First, though, after the show 24 Hours in Police Custody returned to our screens last week, viewers were left talking about one story in particular.
Adam White was chasing two intruders after they attempted to break into his home when he lost control of his car and left them in a critical condition.
Well, as a result, he was arrested and later sentenced to 22 months in prison for causing injury by dangerous driving.
Well, Adam was released in September and joins us now with his partner Lindsay to tell his story alongside former Detective Chief Superintendent Sue Hill. Good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. It really seemed to strike a nerve with a lot of people, this story, from watching it on the Channel 4 programme. But let's go back to the beginning. So it was September 2019 and you saw on security cameras that you were being broken into.
Yeah, I got alerted by a noise and went over and checked the monitor and I saw the figures outside the property.
And this was you in the house, your partner was in the house, your child was in the house?
Yeah, she was in bed and Lindsay was asleep on my lap and...
Yeah, nightmare.
It was scary.
So you... And this is where life takes separate tracks and you never know quite what's going to happen at the time. I assume there was a bit of red mist because, you know, that's on your property. Your family is threatened.
Yeah, it was a moment of madness. You don't... There's no words for the thought that goes through your head when you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. So you grab your keys. You jumped in the car and you raced after them. What mode of transport were they on?
Motorbike.
Right. And you didn't take your phone?
No.
So was that just that you just forgot to take your phone?
Yeah, I just grabbed the key. I mean, I wish I had the phone so I could have called the police. So
this is where the problem takes place because you're chasing them round a sharp bend, they collide with another vehicle and your car crashes into the back of them, catches on fire, airbags go off, everything suddenly grinds to a halt and the reality, I imagine, hits very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
You haven't got your phone, so you go to a neighbour's house and that's when you say, please call my wife, please call the police.
Exactly, yeah. I went to this lady's house, she's carrying a little baby, she's petrified, obviously hearing the crash. And
yeah.
She was lovely. She helped us out. She called Lindsay, and Lindsay was on the phone to the police as well at the time. So, yeah.
You get arrested at the scene.
Yes.
And the words, letters, GBH are mentioned.
I didn't have a clue what that meant.
And so, at what point did it become apparent what it actually meant?
When we got to the police station.
How did you feel through all of that?
I was still in a lot of pain. I was shaking, scared. It also happened so quick. It was petrifying.
Yeah.
Lindsay, this is a very difficult thing to talk about, but it's something that came up in the documentary about your story, and it just goes to show the sort of fallout and how far it reaches when something like this happens. And at this time, shortly after you were arrested, you found out that you were pregnant.
Yeah.
Normally, for the pair of you, this would have been a joyous moment, but it wasn't something you felt that you could enjoy, and it led to you making a decision, didn't it?
Yeah.
What happened?
So we must have, you know, fallen pregnant days before the incident happened, you know, to a week maybe. And just kind of faced with that decision, people don't understand, you know, it was the hardest decision we had to make.
Yeah, of course.
But he was told that he would face prison time with this charge. And it was a case of, can I survive on my own? And, you know, although there are parents out there that can, we already had 2 children that we were supporting, a mortgage and all the bills and everything was normal.
It's a deeply personal choice and your choice to make.
And it's hard and it's had a bit of a backlash, you know, that decision coming out to public.
Stress of you carrying our child for the 9 months, wasn't it? It was not knowing, you know, where we actually stand because we didn't actually have a charge until further on down the line.
Well, you, excuse me, you made that decision. You were convicted in January this year of causing serious injury by dangerous driving, sentenced to 22 months. The criminals were given suspended sentences and 200 hours of community service. So you got the custodial sentence and they didn't. You have to then make this very, very personal decision, which, as Holly said, is yours to make. Your first night, first week, not been in trouble before, in prison. What was that like?
It was an ordeal. It was scary, loud, noisy, the bangs. It's not a nice place to be.
You were released in September for good behaviour. you then have this, many people, we've interviewed people that have talked about this, once you leave prison and you are trying to get back into normal life, it's a very different life to the one you left behind because you've got a criminal record now.
Yeah, so my line of work was data centres, and trying to get back into that industry as an electrician has been really hard because of the criminal conviction. It's not that they don't want me, it's that they can't because of the insurances. So being told no and no and no, and it'll just put me on a bit of a downward spiral.
I bet it has, yeah.
Looking back on that night, and we always say there's no point in what ifs. You know, what happens, happens. The way it pans out is the way it pans out. But how do you look back on the choices that you both made at that time?
I wouldn't. Knowing what I know now and the sort of consequences could have and could have had if the public if they were on the roads at the time when it happened, that's my biggest fear was you know, no one got hurt publicly. And I do feel bad that the injuries that the guys suffered because it was no intention, but I wouldn't advise anyone to do what I've done.
You've had the documentary went out 24 hours in police custody. Quite the reaction. I mean, there's been a bit of negative. I mean, you get that in all walks of life, but there's been a lot of support. A stranger launched a GoFundMe page because the sort of fallout of this, again, is that you were left with a lot of debt because obviously not working, being in prison, but also covering your legal costs. So there have been people putting money into that, which has been remarkable. I bet you didn't imagine that was going to happen.
No, it's been so heartwarming and overwhelming, and, you know, it's, you know, restored my faith in humanity. There's some lovely people out there, and and, you know, bless you all. It's lovely.
Nice thing to do.
Sue, Bedfordshire Police, following the episode, said in this case there were no winners. This episode is an important reminder that people must not take the law into their own hands. Such actions can have enormous consequences. What do you say as a former Met
the
detective?
state have taken the decision to prosecute to deter other people, but I've just spent an hour, this lovely, lovely man. I think, how can it be the criminal justice system? Even the jury would have been guided by the judge. But you think, if I'd been on that jury, even knowing to the letter of the law that you were guilty, let me tell you, I'd have found you not guilty.
So what happened then? Was he made an example of? Just to warn everybody else?
I think we mustn't have a lawless society where we take the law into our own hands. But even as an ex-police officer, and I sit here with family members who all say the same thing, what on earth are we doing when we're putting someone... He's getting upset now. When we put someone like him in prison... And the two scallywags, I can think of other names that I can't use, that they're wandering around and 4 weeks later they can't go to prison, bless them, because of their injuries. But we put him in, he goes to prison, they can carry on their benefits, having more mass production of children so they can keep going and causing more criminality. I'm sorry, but I just get I'm saddened, I'm angry, but... On the other side of the coin, I suppose we've got to look at we can't take the law into our own hands, but every case on its merits. And I'm sure if you were on that jury, you'd have thought, do you know what? I know what the judge is saying, but I was on a jury this year, and let me tell you, when I first walked in on the Monday morning, they say, can you do 3 months as a jury member? Well, tell me who can just give up 3 months of their lives to sit on a very important case. I won't even describe the people that do that.
There was a jury and they did reach a verdict, and that
did.
was the verdict, and they heard all the evidence in court.
But they probably didn't think the judge was going to put him to prison. The judge has made an example of him. I guarantee that jury are probably people that are donating to his fund, because I know a lot of police officers will be have donated to that fund, because it can't be right, can it?
Well, a lot of people will be remembering the Tony Martin case back in 1999, won't they?
You're probably too young, as I've told you.
Yeah.
In 1999, when Tony Martin, a vulnerable old chap, is in his farm and he shot someone leaving, a 16-year-old guy, and he shot him in the back. But the difference was...
Shot him dead?
Shot him dead. But he had a gun, you know, he was there. Adam acted in that moment. Unless you've been in that situation, which a lot of cops have, where you are running and your adrenaline is going and you are scared and you are frightened and you are not thinking straight.
And you're protecting your child.
You're protecting your child and your property, and these people are out there committing crime, and they've got away with it.
So what do you say? What's your advice to anyone watching now? If they're faced with that, you've got to back off.
You will end up like Adam.
Yeah. And you'd say that as well, I think. Having gone through what you've gone through, you would say, in hindsight, if I could have kept a cool head and adrenaline and that fight or flight, whatever it is, don't do
Can
it.
someone please give him a job out there? Honestly, this young man, he's adorable. Let's get him a lovely job.
Well, look, thank you very much. Enjoy your Christmas together this year as well.
Thank you,
And
guys.
it's lovely to see you as well. Welcome back.